To face the state on this Sunday morning, we are joined today by the endorsed candidates for governor. Now we have Republican Mark Boughton. He's in a field of 5, and here is the rest of the field. Bob Stefanowski, David Stemmerman, Steve Obsitnik, and Tim Herbst. And with us today is the mayor of Danbury, Mark Boughton. And good to see you here in the program, Mayor Boughton.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me again, Dennis.
These debates are now focused between the 3 businessmen who are going at each other, particularly Stemmerman and Stefanowski, as to who is the more Democratic of the 2. Who is the more Democratic of the 2, in your opinion?
Well, you just can't make it up. I call them the Stemmerowskis, and they are pretty much the same candidate. And you're right, the debate has really boiled down to now who is more Democratic than the other one, when they were both Democrats, and they both donated from people like Chris Dodd, Hillary Clinton, as well as Barack Obama at various times. I would say to you that probably Stefanowski has more recently been active as a Democrat as of last July, was looking at running for governor as a Democrat and then decided to re-enroll as a Republican. But I think what's most offensive about both of their candidacies is that while they were donating to Democratic causes and Democratic candidates, I was out knocking on doors for local Republican candidates and trying to get Republicans elected using Republican ideals and proposals and principles. And I think at the end of the day, they particularly avoided the convention process, so they didn't have to answer for their background or why they didn't support the Republican Party in the past. So I think it's something people need to know when they go into the polls on August 14th. And the fact is that those 2 individuals really aren't Republicans at all.
There were some a few months ago who said that your health might become an issue in the campaign. You are tackling it head-on in a commercial. What kind of discussion with your advisors went into that?
Well, it was risky. There's no question about that. But I've always felt it's more important to be transparent about whatever thing happens or whatever I'm involved in. You know, I've been a mayor for a long time, and everything I've ever done in office has been on the front page of the paper at some point or another. And I'm proud of the decisions I made there. And I also wanted the people to know about my health. Some candidates were running a whisper campaign saying I wasn't up for the job. And you know, the reality is I do more by 8 a.m. than they do all day, because I'm running a city plus on the road every night visiting with various Republican activists and opinion leaders. So I just wanted it out there. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong, and I'm not afraid to address it.
One of the key components of your campaign and your plan is to eliminate the income tax. And as you know, we have the father of the income tax in the studio with us. He's going to be talking about this a little bit later on. Some say it's just not feasible to eliminate it. How will it be done?
Well, I think Governor Weicker is a little more than just the father of the income tax, right? So he served our state ably and very well over the years in the Senate as well. But having said all that, this is an opportunity for us. This is an opportunity for Connecticut. It's at one moment in our history where there's pretty much consistency and a consensus about what we need to do going forward, and we don't necessarily do the things we've done in the past going forward. Now, to replace the income tax, which generates about $7.5 billion per year in revenue, you've got to have a new government, a completely redesigned government. Otherwise, you're going to need $7.5 billion of revenue to fund that. So our idea here is not just about eliminating or phasing out the income tax. It's about redesigning state government, because there is consensus around the table that we just can't keep doing things that we've always done. It's also about competitiveness, getting our rates to competitive to other states around Connecticut, so that Connecticut isn't more expensive to live in, it's less expensive to live in. That'll certainly spur economic development and investment in our state.
How will this new government look, though? Do you need to eliminate departments? Do you need to privatize?
It's radically,
where would that be done?
It's radically different. We haven't released those details yet. They're coming. But they range from everything from combining, condensing departments, reducing duplication of services, to actually looking at outsourcing many of our different programs, things like the DMV, spinning off our DSS to nonprofit services. All of those strategies come in place, as well as a workout plan for those unfunded liabilities, the pension and the retiree medical that are out there as well.
There have been some who've said publicly, Joe Scarborough among them, that the income tax of 1991 put the state of Connecticut on the road to ruin. Do you agree with that?
I think that the income tax since 1991, what I know is that there's been zero growth in the economy since the implementation of that particular tax. And it wasn't just necessarily about the tax. It was also about the perception of Connecticut in terms of always being this, you know, the envy of New England, the cheapest place to live. Now it's not. But also the fact that there was a cap that was never fully implemented. If the 2 had been implemented appropriately, you wouldn't have seen this, you know, very expansive growth in government that we now see in terms of what they're trying to do. So it was a bunch of things that went there. And since '04, by the way, we've had negative growth in our economy. But definitely that was starting our road to challenges. It's something that I think is unwindable. It'll take a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's 10 years that our phase out occurs, but it's something that is doable.
I was asking Ned Lamont the same question, that most people in Connecticut will not be voting in the primary next month, and that's because they're independents. They're not allowed to vote in the Democratic or the Republican Party primaries. In your case, you could become the nominee with 30,000 votes,
That's right.
as few as 30,000 votes. Do you think that process should be opened up in future elections so that independents can vote?
I'm satisfied with the current process we have. Look, I put 2 years into this already, between the fundraising and then going out and working on potential delegates for the convention and trying to woo delegates. It's a vetting process that I think everybody should go through. I mean, at some point, everybody's going to look at something in your record and ask questions, at that town committee meeting late in February and somewhere in the corner of the state. And that's a really healthy thing, and I think it separates the wheat from the chaff. The problem that we have now, 2 guys have their pocketbook open or their wallets open, and they're not participating in that process. And what's going to happen, and I call them pop-up candidates, and they are, because what's going to happen down the road is you're going to find things out like, geez, these guys really are Democrats and not Republicans, and there are other issues that I'm sure will be raised over the next couple of weeks. And they haven't participated in that vetting process the way the rest of us have. So I think it's problematic. I like the way the process is set up right now. Of course, I did win the convention, so it worked pretty good for us.
You have 3 candidates for lieutenant governor running right now.
Right.
You don't have a running mate. You decided to go solo in this, and you won't have a choice as to who it will be come August 14th. But in the future, do you think that should be changed, where you get to pick your running mate?
Well, I think that's part of the changes and fixes that ought to go into the Citizens Election Program. It is silly to give a LG candidate their own grant, which will cost us roughly, if all 3 qualify, $1.2 million in this cycle alone, just on the Republican side. The reality is that I think, and I'd like to see, and it has been proposed in legislature, a governor pick a lieutenant governor prior to running. You go for 1 grant. You work together as a team all the way through the convention. And I think that works out better than the current system that we have. And there's other fixes in the seat program that I think need to be changed as well. But I don't necessarily like this process. I want to know who I'm going to be working with. I want to work on policy positions and plans. And just from a manpower standpoint, it makes it easier to share, your manpower and go to different parts of the state and have the same message.
Mark Boughton, Republican endorsed nominee for governor. We thank you for being in the program today. We'll see you back here on August 7th for your debate, Republican debate with your 4 other colleagues. Thank you, Mayor. When we come back, we will be talking with former governor and former U.S. Senator Lowell Weicker. We'll hear what he has to say about campaign 2018. And we welcome your comments. You can find me right now on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.